There's another one you don't want to hear. Frankly, if do I.
1, 2, 3, set, go!
Hello and welcome to episode 129 of the Power Chord Hour podcast, first episode of 2023. How you doing out there? I'm your host, Anthony Merchant, here very, very late with this one. I know it is, I guess if you're listening today, it comes out January 11th, and I believe the last I spoke to you on this here podcast was on the last episode for the December rundown that I did like not long before leaving to go hang out in Illinois for the new year. And, I've been telling everybody this is kind of my excuse for, I guess, really catching up on everything and anything that I still have to get done in the new year that I haven't yet. I've been blaming on the fact that my New Year's Day lasted like 5 days, to be honest. I talked about it a little bit on the last one. I went to go hang out with Zach from my buddy who we've had on this show many times. He was on our top 5 Drive-Thru Records albums, our top 5 Blink songs, our top 5 Alkaline Trio songs, a couple other episodes. The dude has been on a bunch. One half of the Bad Boys of Illinois. Shout out Kyle Steven, who is not there. He was in the northern part. Zach's down in Springfield, and sadly Kyle's too far away, but that would have been great to see him. But anyway, went to go hang out with him, had a great time. But yeah, I mean, we hung out and just had a good time for days. So like, I got back to town on, actually I got back Thursday last week. So that would have been the 5th. I did get back, and I mean on the way too. I mean, I drove to go hang out with Zach, and then on the way back, even caught a Menzinger show in Cleveland. So I was kind of all around. And then when I got back, because I also believe on the last podcast I believe my words, and I could be wrong, but I want to say my words were something along the lines of like, as soon as I get home from Springfield, I'm recording the new podcast, and that did not happen right away. I also came home. It was the weirdest thing. I physically felt fine, but for like 3 days I don't even really want to call it strep throat because it didn't really feel like strep throat. I physically felt fine, but like my voice was just strained, and it was not like the best to like do a podcast and stuff, which I still had to work, and I work in radio, and I still had to do the radio show for last week. It was our first one of the new time slot, so I really couldn't skip last week's episode of the radio show. So just got really busy with everything. And I mean, my voice was already shot, but by the time I did everything else, my voice was really, really shot. And it really only got better like, I don't know, a day or two ago now. So kind of finally got back to where I felt like I could do the podcast. And you'll hear my voice too, because I actually did an interview over the weekend with Maddie Grace of Cluttered, our second. I always say Cluttered. She's in a million other bands, but I always feel like that's her main one. But anyway, I had a really fun interview with her on Saturday, but you'll hear it next week on the next episode. My voice is definitely gravelly. It is definitely like strained. So I was like, I already had that booked, and I already had some, again, like with the radio show and just, the other stuff I got to do in radio for my job, like other priorities came in, and, so what I'm saying is I spent the first 3 minutes of this here podcast just giving you a big old explanation on why this one took so long, but I had to get it out. It is or I guess my top 10 of 2022, talking my top 10 favorite albums of the year. So that was the other thing. I almost this week was going to air the Maddie interview, but I'm like, it kind of feels weird not to start the year with my favorites of last year, and really I can't believe it. This is already our 4th one on the podcast, because I did do one for my favorite albums of 2019. So here we are with another one. I'm excited for it. That is this episode. I'm flying solo for the first one of 2023, and again, next week we will have a guest once again, and that'll be a good one. I got to say, that was a really fun interview, but we'll get into that next week. We are here to talk my top 10 favorite records of 2022, and a really good year for music. I mean, just again, the last couple years, of all the shitty things in the world, music really hasn't been one of them. It's been a really good time for music the last few years, and it really hasn't slowed down. 2022, even with kind of things going back to normal, for the most part, like it really didn't slow down. Bands putting out some great music, which you kind of wondered if it was gonna, like once people weren't like locked in as much, and were able to go out as much, and bands were able to tour and stuff again this or last year, I should say, that like, maybe their, the musical output and all the creative output and stuff would maybe slow down, but really didn't seem like it. We got tons and tons of good music from, bands new and old. I'm looking at my list here, and like, there's already stuff that I'm like, oh, it could have I definitely could have fit more. Well, I guess I couldn't fit more in my top 10, but you get what I mean. There's a lot that I could have put in here. But starting at number 10, I've talked about this band quite a bit. Heart to Gold with their record Tom that came out back in April of 2022. That not a band that I was aware of. They're a pretty new band, and when I heard their album, I heard their first song, Tiger's Jaw, which I believe was the leadoff single on that, and was blown away from the first listen. I was like, it was just great, because like the band, I've said it every time I play them on the radio show, but like they really toe this line. They're kind of in the vein of like an emo band, and I don't even love the term emo, but it gets used a lot, and I feel like they fit under that. But like with emo, there's like the harder side of it. I kind of think of maybe like a Heart Attack Man, maybe something like that, where it's like it is kind of that like, I feel like they could go play with like a Tiger's Jaw or an American Football or like something on that side of emo, but I feel like it's both sides. Like I feel like the guys in Heart to Gold, like I feel like it's both sides of that. Like there's an aspect of the band that's like that dad's Midwestern emo kind of stuff. And then also the other side of it that's a little more, not even pop punk, but like a little, also kind of have that like title fight, a little more of the grungy punk side. Like I don't know, it like works really well. And I think when you listen to them, you get what I'm saying. Like it's this really like it's melody driven like indie rock, but it's still, like can be loud, distorted guitars kind of, also Title Fight. A band who I swear we hear them everywhere, and maybe I'm throwing an influence on this band they don't have, but I definitely get heavy influence, Title Fight influence from this band. I definitely think they are a fan of them. But the album opener right away, like Give Me a Call, like they're really like great musicians. Like I don't know the age of the band, to be honest, but like I think they're all like early 20s. And they really have a sound that seems like they know what they want. Like, some bands you kind of have that thing where first couple records you're like looking for your sound. It's not super defined yet. Like this band already has a pretty like defined sound, and like just on track 1 I think is a great example, because it like the song goes in all these different places and does so many different things. And like I'm talking about how this band kind of, toes the line of both sides of, emo or that, emotional indie rock. I don't know. I'm trying to think of a word besides emo, but I feel like they perfectly fit within that category. But just I feel like the album opener itself, right away they show you like every side. It's a band who I feel like they have many different influences, and you hear those many different influences in their music. I think it comes out amazing. But one of the best, their singer Grant Whiteoak, he has an insanely strong voice, and grunge, like I wouldn't call them a grunge band, but like they just put out this like live at Studio 4 with Will Yip, which I also believe he worked on this record. But they just did an amazing like stripped down like a live thing they put out, like a live EP live from Studio 4 that you can go check out as well. And like his voice, like Grant's voice in that setting, I almost do want to say it's kind of grungy, like this real. It's stripped back. Like the one I'm talking about, it's not like really heavy. It's them playing acoustic and stripped back, but like it also, I feel like on top of that, it shows that these songs work in all these different ways, because they don't sound like they do on the record on this like session they did, but like it shows the songs in another light, and they're just as good in that light too. So I think it's great. This whole record just, it works perfectly. Like it's fun, but again, it never goes too like, sometimes if you go too much in that like, the Midwestern emo side of like, weird time signatures and like, too much guitar noodling and stuff, like they never go too far that way, but then they also don't go too far where they're just big, dumb, loud songs. Like there's definitely substance there. And like, again, it works both ways. And again, they have a sense of humor. The album title is Tom, and the pitcher is just, I think it's one of the members of the band. I can't remember. I saw it somewhere. They said who it is on the front, but I mean, it's a ridiculous cover with kind of ridiculous name for it. But like the songs are still very serious and the music is very serious. So you can tell the band does care. Like, I mean, they have a sense of humor about things, but like they definitely care about the sound, and they're, they've thought it out. You listen to this record, and even though they're all young guys from, like the suburbs of Minneapolis, like I think they know what they want. I think they know what they're doing. And also with that too, I mean, I don't think tons of bands sound like them around that area. I mean, there's a lot of great bands that kind of are in the vein of Heart's Gold right now, but I don't think a lot of them are coming out of like the Twin Cities. I mean, I think they're kind of unique in that area for their sound right now. But I again, like I feel like anything under that like emo blanket, I think the band kind of will appease anybody. Whatever side you like of that genre and what's going on in it, I think you will be a fan of them. I also think it will be too, like they've definitely done a good amount of touring already, but like I think as they keep going and get more exposure, like again, they have a sound that just works with multiple kind of bands. So I think you'll see them on a bunch of different bills with a bunch of different kind of bands. I mean, there's sprinkles of pop punk in here, but they would never, I get the feeling they wouldn't call themselves a pop punk band. And I feel like calling them a pop punk band is just wildly, it's not selling them correctly. And it is kind of, it's totally, there's a difference between having some pop punk tendencies and then being a pop punk band, but they're another one too. And I always throw it out there with a band who's a trio, but when they have an extremely full sound, and this one does, I mean, like just for being a trio, this band like does some amazing stuff. But I'll make as every year I make a little playlist of the of my favorite albums. So I'll put these songs on there. But I mean, I would say like the three best to kind of represent the record. Also kind of my three favorites as well. Give Me a Call, the album opener, Sonic, and Tiger's Jaw, which was the song I heard first, and just really good. That whole record is very solid. So that was my 10th favorite record of 2022. Moving on to number 9, we had this band on the show, and I absolutely loved them. I discovered them, well, really the album didn't come out until November, so I mean, pretty fresh album, only been out about 2 months now. But coming in at number 9, The Eves, Lately I Don't Have a God, and Other Obvious Epiphanies. Great band from up the road in Buffalo. I just kind of randomly discovered them from, I got like a press release. I mean, I get nonstop emails from, different PRs, PR firms and like record labels and different stuff, and just constantly getting music sent to my email. And, some of it good, some of it bad. You never know what you're going to get, sometimes luck of the draw. But The Eves was one of those bands in there that I got an email from, and, checked it out and absolutely loved it. Like right away, it was like, oh my God, like this is great. I mean, and also it was cool because I was like, oh, cool, Buffalo band. Like I'm always, I live 90 minutes from Buffalo. It's like I kind of, local's maybe not the word, but I mean, it's close enough where it's like, it's neat when you see a band. I mean, they're about to do their album release show, which little plug. I mean, if you're listening to this before January 20th, they're doing their album release show up at Mohawk Place in Buffalo, my favorite venue in Buffalo. And it's going to be a really good one. I mean, this band, this album, I mean, these songs sound like things you need to hear live. They're very anthemic. But, I mean, yeah, just kind of randomly discovering this band and this album, at the end of the year, it came out again in November. And, it's funny because, like, come November, I mean, I'm already kind of solidifying my top 10 of the year. I mean, I'm not expecting much else to come in, and I mean, really, sometimes you get a couple of those last ones. Now, come December, you're definitely like, it's just closed off. I'm like, people really aren't putting out much new music. I mean, I still kind of keep my, ears open and everything, but by that point, you kind of already know your top 10. But this one, like right away, also kind of an instant for me, like loved it. Because the other thing with that too is even if an album you really like, it comes out those like last 2 months of the year, like a lot of times you don't realize how much you like it until the following year. You know what I mean? After you have some time to spend with it. But I mean, this one like just instantly was like just right away. Like I love this record. It hit me out of nowhere. I instantly loved it. And they're kind of, what I love about them is kind of the same thing that I love about Heart to Gold. And even though they sound nothing like Heart to Gold, they're a band who they kind of have this like, they're definitely like an indie rock band, but like not the self-indulgent, boring kind of indie rock. And also it's like indie rock recorded by like, dudes who have been in punk bands and love punk and stuff, like like, if that makes sense, like it's fun, like it's good indie rock, but without being extremely, extremely boring. Like I will even say that like there's bands that I can hear in the Eves sound that like me personally, I'm probably not a big fan of, and only some. I mean, there's tons of bands we both love. I mean, we were fanboying out on a bunch of bands. I interviewed them, but like on the indie rock side, like the indie rock alternative kind of side, like there's definitely bands I can hear in the Eves that like I don't personally listen to or am that big of a fan of, but with the Eves doing it and delivering it the way they do, I love it. It works amazingly. Like they're really. They have this great sound where, like, again, like there's this punk energy that also really does. It gives you this. I think that's why these songs, I really want to hear them live, is like, if they were just kind of mid-tempo, boring indie rock songs, but like they're not. They have this like, kind of fast tempo, energetic. I mean, very much like, the Replacements. I mean, that's definitely a big band that I feel like you can hear within their sound, which I mean is one that I absolutely love. But like it's great. And on the other side too, the production. I feel like you have to bring up the production on this album. It is unreal. The album sonically just sounds amazing. And another thing in the interview, I mean, GCR Audio up in Buffalo, who I mean I've heard about a bunch over the years. Tons of great stuff has come out of there. But again, to talk to the dudes in the Eves about recording there and everything, I mean, they know what they're doing. I mean, it's like you listen to this album, you would think they had this huge budget behind them and like all this huge production and stuff. Like it just sonically sounds so full and big. And they're another band who's just a trio. And I mean, just coming from a 3-piece band, I mean, the entire album just sounds absolutely amazing. So I mean, you definitely got to shout out. They worked with Jay Zubricki and also Robbie Takic from Goo Goo Dolls did some work on there too. But all the behind the scenes too on there, that album sounds so damn good. And the dudes in the Eves are talking accolades too of GCR Audio, so I feel like also you got to bring that up because it does. It sounds great on top of it. I mean, that's the other thing with albums. There's albums that are great that don't sound great, production wise or sonically. They just kind of leave a little bit to be desired. But now with this one, the songs are good and the production is good. Like everything is just working at a 10 here. Like just the behind the scenes stuff, the band themselves, the songwriting, like everything. And they're like, they're a fairly new band. This is their sophomore record, but like it really feels kind of like the debut in a way of like, this is really, it's another where I think they found that sweet spot of like what the three of them do together and that sound. Like, I think they really found that, which I mean, it's the beginning of it. So, hopefully they continue working on it throughout albums. That's always a fun thing when you find a band and, they have a sound you love and it's like, oh, they just started this. Like, it's going to be cool to see how they explore it and progress with it and everything. But I mean, even on this record, they already seem like they know what they want to do. They know what they want to do with the music. They know how they want it to sound. And it's just good, anthemic, energetic. I mean, it all really, there's not a song on here that doesn't sound like it'd be great live. Like, I'm really looking forward to that album release show because I really think I've never seen the band live, but I really feel like they're a band you gotta see live. You get that feeling listening to these songs, which is always great. Which is also a hard thing too. Sometimes the songs, if the production and stuff isn't done well, you do lose that, like, oh man, these would be great live. Like, it loses that energy, but they really didn't lose it on this record. You can still hear the energy of the songs still come out, so it still gives you that, like, oh man, I want to hear this. I want to hear this live, like, right away. But yeah, I mean, it's second record, but really, and I got to spend more time. Again, I really discovered them on their second album. I got to spend more time on their first, but like, just going from the first to now, I mean, they really do seem like they know what they want and they know what they're doing on this. I mean, it's so like the songs are layered and thought out. Like, one of the coolest things too, there's trumpet all over this record and it's tastefully used in this way that adds an amazing element to the music. And in a way, too, that's like it's on there quite a bit. Like, the trumpet's all over the record, but it's so subtle that sometimes you don't realize that it's there for a minute. Like, you'll be listening to it, and there's a couple of songs on the record that I probably didn't notice till like the third listen that the trumpet was even there. Like, it was just absolutely, it works so well. Craigie versus the Screws, one that comes to mind. I think that might be the best one with trumpet on it. It's like, it's probably one I really didn't notice the first first listen or two. But then when I did, I'm like, oh my God, like that works so well. And it really does. That entire record, I mean, I can't say enough good stuff about it. And I mean, just the fact that it's already hit me this hard and it's only been out since November. I mean, this is one of the ones where, yeah, I mean, retroactively, who knows? In a year, this could be one of my, this might be like in my top 5 of 2022. But yeah, this record came out of nowhere for me, hit me hard. I'm listening to it a ton. I mean, just more and more. I enjoyed interviewing the band and just getting to hear these songs more and more, and I can't wait to hear them live. But I would say my 3 off this record: Everything Sucks and I Am God, Craigie versus the Screw, and Not in Love. Those are probably my 3 favorite, and the 3 you can listen to on the playlist I will put up. But moving on to number 8, it is Fastball with the Deep End. This one came out in June of last year, and they put out the soundtrack EP. I interviewed Tony Scalzo of Fastball a little bit before this record came out, and they put out the soundtrack EP earlier in the year. But it's 4 songs. That EP was 4 songs off this, so I mean, really, it was almost like a teaser of what was to come. But I mean, this is legitimately one of Fastball's best albums in their entire catalog. I mean, they are far from a new band. They've been together, I don't know, they've been together 30 years, but if they're not, they're getting close to being a band for 30 years. So, I mean, they have quite a big catalog, and this album sits up there as one of their best. I mean, just like, it is so good. That classic power pop sound that they are known for. I mean, they know what they're good at, and they've crafted it so much at this point. Talking about like with the Eves finding their sound, and that's one band who, has their sound that they're finding, and they keep working on it. And they're only album 2 in. Now here's a band who has their sound, and they're like album 10, album 11 in. However many albums Fastball's in at this point. And, and also with that, I mean, the further you go in your career, you can also get stale. You can also, you can be what you think is honing your craft, but you can just be repetitive and just continue rehashing the same thing over and over again. And they don't do that. This album it's like no nonsense, good power pop. The first song on it, Soundtrack, I mean, it has a huge Big Star vibe to it, but also it's great because it has a Big Star vibe to it without being just a ripoff of Big Star. It's still going through the Fastball filter. It's still a Fastball song, but you hear Big Star, which I mean, Big Star, one of the greatest power pop bands to ever do it. So like, I don't think that's a bad thing at all. I don't think if you're listening to that and go, oh yeah, like because also too, a lot of people try to nail that Big Star sound and don't do it very well. There are more than enough power pop bands out there. Like, let me tell you, going back to like how much music I hear a lot of power pop, and there's a lot of great power pop being made, but there's a lot that, you can just tell, like, I get a lot of stuff sent my way where it's like people are just trying to recreate, Big Star. And it's like they just, it's easier said than done sometimes. But this one, I would not say. But also, with that said, I don't think they were going for, Big Star. I mean, it's an influence in there, but I don't think they were trying to be like, oh, let's make this album sound like a Big Star record. But you hear it on here, and it's amazing stuff. Just amazing songwriting, well-crafted songs. I mean, Miles and Tony really, it's one of those power pop duos. Like, power pop bands just seem to work really well in like songwriting duos. Like, there's something about that. I can't remember when I interviewed him. I'm sure we talked about it, but like, I don't remember if he said that they do a lot of writing together or if they write a lot separately and then just bring things in. But like, either way, the duo of them, it works so well. The back and forth on the album, the songs mesh and work together so well. Whether or not they work on them together or not, they all feel, the continuity and everything. Like it feels like they were all written together in the same room, 100%. It's the best power pop album you'll find in 2022, hands down. There were a couple really good ones that came out last year, but I mean, this is the best one you're going to find. It also just sounds like a rejuvenated band. I mean, they really, like, if you go through their catalog, I don't think there's any like really bad Fastball albums. I think all of them are pretty good. I mean, there's at least some good, like, you're going to find some good songs on them, but some are better than others. But like this one, there's really not a bad song on this one. Like, again, this is honestly one of their best records. So I mean, it really they're in a good spot, and I know they're already working on more music, which makes me very happy because I think they're in a really good place for writing, and it just whatever they're doing seems to work really well. And and a lot like most of their music. I think just like if you go even the big hits, like you go listen to like The Way or Out of My Head, it's like they have this timelessness to them. They really don't sound like a certain time or era. And it's the same thing on this one. I mean, the album, I don't think you're going to listen back to this album in, 20, 30 years and go, oh, that sounds like the year 2022 or anything like that. It just sounds timeless. I mean, you even listen to it now and, I mean, it sounds modern, but it also doesn't sound, modern in the way of just whatever bullshit's popular right now, or whatever production tricks are in, none of that. It's just really good stuff. But yeah, I'm already excited because I know they're already working on more stuff, and they've been pretty prolific lately. So I would definitely say if you're a fastball fan, be on the lookout because I think we're going to get more stuff sooner than later. But yeah, they seem to be in a good place. They put out, I truly think, one of the best records of their career. The 3 songs on this, like the one I mentioned, Soundtrack, the ones with those with the Big Star vibe on it. And I know when I talked to Tony, I mean, he definitely said they're influenced by Big Star, but they're also he kind of pointed out too, like I think a lot of like the UK bands, a lot of like the UK power pop bands are more of what they're focused on. But that's not to say, I mean, Big Star are one of their influences for sure. But yeah, I think that song, you hear it a lot. Growing, Gone, which I think might be one of their just best songs in general. And I Only Remember the Good, just another great no-nonsense power pop song. Really good stuff there. Now let's move on to number 7. It is 3LH with Silver Dream Road. This one came out back in May of 2022. Some of the best and most fun guitar playing I heard all year. I mean, that is... everybody's good in this band. I mean, all the musicianship is great, but like, some bands I feel like the lyrics are what pop out first. Some bands even maybe it's the bass or whatever, but like this, it's guitar. It is the guitar playing. It is absolutely, and I wish I had. I did not write down the band members' names in front of me, so I do not have them. But I know their singer plays guitar, and I know they have a lead guitarist. So I mean, there's 2 guitar players in the band, but like what they do is just so goddamn good. Like those 2 just. Their guitar playing meshes so well. It connects in this great way. Like that's the best. Like I've heard people say this, and it really is true. Like I won't take credit because I don't think I realized it so much until I heard others say it, and then I kind of went back and listened, and it's absolutely true. But like Bob Stinson and Paul Westerberg, like in the Replacements, like a lot of times their guitar playing, you can't distinguish one from the other. Like it's just a wall of fucking sound coming at you in the best way. Like not like a muddy mess of sound, but like that huge Replacement sound and that guitar tone, sometimes it's hard to pick apart. That's what Paul's doing. That's what Bob's doing. They work together and make this sound. And it's the same thing with 3LH. I mean, not even that they sound all that Replacement-y, but like they have this like wall of guitar sound with some great fucking playing. Like again, the leads are so good. Like I tend to think a lot too of like X, X is a band that I think of a lot when I think of 3LH because 3LH has this like definitely kind of like rockabilly, kind of punk. Like, I mean, there's many, like you can tell they know their shit musically. Like you can tell these dudes know their shit and they listened to many, their influences are not just like one band or one sound, very much like X. Like, I mean, just well-versed music. And the guitar playing reminds me of Billy Zuma that way, where it's like, it's really fun playing, and it's like I would believe if they weren't even really like punk rock guitar players, but they're really good guitar players playing at faster tempos almost, if that makes sense. So this is that way with Billy Zoom. Billy Zoom's like a lot of his leads and stuff. Sometimes they're very punk rock, but like some of that stuff is just straight up like Chuck Berry just played at like fast tempos, and it's like, and it works so amazingly. And it's kind of the same with 3LH sometimes. It's like some of those guitar leads and stuff, I don't even feel like are like, really even like in the, in the vein of punk rock as much as just really good fucking like rock and roll guitar playing at faster tempos. But yeah, I mean, the album, just the energy here, again with like live bands, this is a band I would love to see live. And I know they play out a lot. I mean, they are definitely a live band, and the album wastes no time. I mean, off the first record or the first song, it's just pure energy from like the very first second of the very first song. This is not an album that like overstays its welcome. It's not, the record is not, an hour and 15 minutes long. It's nothing like that. Never gets crazy self-indulgent. It also has this really cool like vintage throwback sound, but while sounding original. Like, and some of it too, like they definitely have like a kind of, they don't sound like the Misfits per se, but like there are songs about like The Shining or Psycho and like different things like that. So I mean, there's definitely like horror movie references and different things like that. And it really all like comes together and works really well. But the live thing again, I would love to see them live. The energy of these songs, I mean, every song has an energy to it where it's just like, Christ, like I'd love to just be fucking thrashing back and forth to these songs live, and I don't even know that like live they would have like huge, like I don't even know if it's really like a mosh pit crowd you would get to these songs, but just fucking moving around and having a good time. There's just such an energy to them, it's just really, I don't know, it's one of those things you really got to hear. It's like it's fun on here explaining them, but like, I feel like with anything, it's like I feel like it's so much better once you hear the song. So I mean, if you've not heard this band, and I've talked about them on the show, and I've played them a bunch all year on the radio show, but I mean, just so good. I mean, you really cannot just throw a label on them. Like there's so many multiple influences in the music, and it really shows. Like you can tell they know their music, they know what they're doing. Like really good stuff. This is my introduction to them, but they've been around for like, I want to say like 5 or 6 years, maybe a little longer even. Like I think their first release was like 2017. So like again, they've had some time to like work shit out. I mean, they didn't just start yesterday, but like still a fairly young band, and already, I mean, just really they seem like the live shows just really well put down, and this album is just so good. This is such a fun listen. Like it's such a good record. I can't recommend it enough. Including if you can appreciate good guitar playing, and you just want to hear some good musicianship, like it's just some good fucking music. So my 3 on here: Psycho, Shadow, and Silver Dream. Those are the 3 I'm saying off this record that definitely need to be checked out. And moving along to number 6, it is Night Crickets with a Free Society, coming out in January of last year. They started early, and this record so good. My buddy Victor DiLorenzo, who, I mean, that was actually a second time on, was the same month this came out. And, I mean, just so good. I was excited when I heard it was coming out. You heard Victor DiLorenzo of the Violent Femmes, and then David J. of Bauhaus and Love and Rockets was doing a band together. And you wonder what that's going to sound like. And then you hear it. And I think the interesting thing is that I don't know that it particularly sounds like what you would expect. Like when you hear those credits, you may think, oh, it's going to sound like the Violent Femmes, or oh, it's going to sound like Bauhaus. And in a way, it does sound like those bands, but it doesn't sound... It's one of the weirdest things, because I think when you listen to it, you'll understand it. Like, it is Victor DiLorenzo's drumming. It is David J's bass playing, which, I mean, both amazing. Like, that is a great rhythm section. Because both of them, insanely, like, original and creative. Like, I mean... There's really Victor DiLorenzo, like, just, I mean, what he does with so little. Like, go listen to the Violent Femmes and, like, the shit he'd be doing on just, like, a snare drum and a cymbal. Like, I mean, he will do crazy things on nothing. Like, that man does not need, like, an 18-piece drum set. Like, he so minimally can do the craziest, most cool rhythmic things on drums. And same with David J., his bass playing. I mean, so damn good. And we also got to say, I mean, Darwin Miners, who's also in the band with them. I mean, I know a lot of attention goes on, Victor and David, just because, I mean, they're from, like, I mean, talk about, like, 80s alternative indie rock, college rock powerhouses. I mean, absolutely. But, I mean, Darwin, who rounds out the trio, I mean, the 3 of them put together the most original sounding album of 2022. I mean, this is, if I was talking about 3LH and how they have all, it's hard to like put just one genre on them. I don't even know the genre you put on Night Crickets. Like they more than any band on here, like they're, I've said it a couple times with a few of these bands, like, again, hard to put just one label on them because maybe they're too indie rock to just call punk, or they're too punk to be just indie rock, this and that. Night Crickets doesn't even fall in like a punk category or an indie rock, like just alternative might be the word. Like, I don't know, the Night Crickets sound like the Night Crickets. Like, that's all I can say about this record. There's nothing you can compare it to in the best way possible. Like, I love this record. No two songs sound the same. That's the other thing about it. You don't have time to put like a label on them because they're already on to the next sound by the next song. Like, when you think you have their sound figured out, fuck you, dude. We're on to the next one, and it sounds nothing like the last song. But with that said, these songs go together so unbelievably well. This album, so well sequenced, it feels like an album. No two songs sound the same, but it feels like a full idea. Doesn't sound like a collection of songs. It sounds like a full record. Like, it is, I think as musicians, I think that's like one of the biggest compliments you could pay any musician, that they could write something that sounds only like them, that you can compare to nothing else, and that none of their songs sound the same, but they all work together amazingly. Like, it's truly, it's so cool to witness too, because I know that this was supposed to just be a project. Like, it's kind of a one-off project. I don't think the band has played one live show since forming. Like, they recorded this all basically separately. I mean, you can go back too, when I talked to Victor DiLorenzo early last year. I mean, we were talking about it, and I mean, it's been over a year now, so the details are a little fuzzy in my mind. I've interviewed many since then, but I believe he said, like, at that point they really, like, it was basically back and forth, online, and not a lot of in person and stuff. And on top of that, you got to give them credit, because a lot of times you do that can crash and burn. A lot of times projects don't work that way. In a lot of ways, this project probably shouldn't have worked. It worked so amazingly. They're working on new music. Like, they did a new music video or their first music video, I believe, for a Free Society not too long ago, like the last couple months. And they've been working on music and stuff. Like, this went from like being like a project, like kind of just a one-off fun project, to now it's becoming something. I think because this record was so good. I mean, I think the three of them went in not knowing what it was going to sound like, and it became amazing. And again, like, this album is extremely experimental, and it takes chances, but never becomes just a bunch of noise or unlistenable. Like, I mean, let's be honest. If you get too experimental or take too many chances on a record, that's not always a good thing. They do it on here and get experimental, but I think that's the name of the game too. Like, the experimenting's so good because that's what they're doing. Like when you turn it on and you start realizing no two songs sound the same and all that, like, you start realizing, like, you realize what the Night Crickets are about. And I think that's part of it. It's part for the chorus. Is like, oh yeah, they're going to experiment. This is not going to be a straightforward song. Like, there's going to be something that comes out of this that I did not see, like, not at all. And also the other cool thing, January is a time where not a lot of new music's coming out. Like, for early, I can tell you right now, I mean, getting guests around, like, there's not tons. It is not like, there's certain months and stuff where, I mean, finding people who just release music to, like, interview, like, not hard. You throw a stone and you'll find 50 people who just released, a punk rock record that I can interview. But, like, right now, it's pretty quiet on the new music front. And this was just great. Like, I mean, this just hit you. I mean, same with the Dirty Nil with Fuck Art the year before. I mean, starting on January 1st. I mean, it's like, just, you're in a month where, like, there's almost no new music, and the Dirty Nil just dropped the greatest album of 2020, which I got to stand by that. That one is still my favorite of 2021, because sometimes my opinions change. Like, I mean, I could definitely look back at some of my top 10s over the years and go, well, I would move this here. I would take this off entirely. But the Dirty Nil, Fuck Art, shout out the Dirty Nil. That album still rules. But anyway, going back to Night Crickets, I know I'm getting sidetracked talking about the best albums of 2021. But yeah, Free Society. I mean, this whole record, like, just it's really. I mean, it also just shows that, I mean, these are musical veterans. These are guys who know what they're doing, because this is a band. This is their first record. They really didn't even know each other all that well. Like, I was surprised, because when I interviewed Victor, I assumed that him and David J go way back. Like, you would think that, like, Bauhaus or Love and Rockets would have toured with the Violent Femmes at some point, but no. Victor met him, I believe, during Coachella in 2013, when the Violent Femmes reunited to play Coachella in 2013, and, like, that. I mean, so, like, 10 years prior, like, not even, they met like 10 years prior, and then did Night Crickets after kind of talking about it. But I mean, they aren't, like, lifelong friends. You know, I think they kind of know each other. Some like Darwin and David know each other much better. I do believe Darwin is like David's manager or something. Like he works with him. So I mean, they obviously know each other a little better. But like still, for the three of them to jump into this project and just again, kind of just for the fuck of it, just for the fun of it. I mean, there really wasn't. You know, you talk to any of them, they didn't have these huge visions with this band. I mean, they were just doing it for fun because they love music. And you listen to this and you'd think they've been working on music together for years. Like you would think that this is like, you know, you would think this record is not their first album. You would think this is like a band who's like been working on this sound for like 10 years. And that's not the case, you know, not at all. But, you know, it showcases again, these are just amazing musicians. And it really does show, like, it reminds you why Victor DiLorenzo is such a great percussionist. You know, with minimal setups, again, it's like you listen and it's like the fucking stuff that he's doing on a snare drum, like with some brushes. Like, I mean, it's just really like he puts so many drummers to shame when you look at what he's doing. Like the minimalism, but like playing things that aren't also that easy, like minimalist setup, but playing things that are kind of complex and, you know, are kind of weird and different. And he does change them up. You know, he's not just playing some straight, you know, 4 on the floor beat or something. Like he's doing his thing and it sounds amazing. Like I love it. So like, again, I can't wait to hear what the sophomore record's going to sound like. Hopefully they play some live shows. They really, unless I'm mistaken, they've not played anything since forming. And I don't think that was ever really a plan because again, it was just kind of a project. But, you know, hopefully this means that at some point we get some live shows from them. That would be great. And my 3 for this one, Black Leather on the Inside, the album opener, Roma A. Clef. I absolutely love. That's my favorite song on the record, 100%. And Little Did I, which probably has the best rhythm to it. That song is so... That one, almost the beginning, reminds me of like the band War. It has this really just great, like... Oh, it's so good. It just has this great sound to it. Just this great, like, just rhythm. I love it. That whole album is really, really good. Like, again, like if you want something that sounds nothing like any other band, but is also sounds good. Because look at, people can sound different for the sake of sounding different, and it can sound like fucking dog shit. Like there's so much quote unquote experimental stuff that you never want to fucking ever listen to again. It's so bad. But like this band, just like, actually, also shout out 1913, which is Victor's other band, which is his duo with Janet Schiff, who I interviewed. That's who I interviewed, actually, when I had him on. It was him and Janet. So we were talking to new 1913. They put out a record last year. They put out a great song, and Drums and Cello Forever. And that band is another one, though, too, where those two experiment and do things that probably shouldn't work, but they work amazingly. Like, I mean, Victor is honestly a person who can do avant-garde thing. Maybe that's the word. I don't even know if avant-garde's the word for it, but like can get experimental, can get weird, can like play with things and improv things, but it sounds so good. And so many times people do that. It is not my thing. It can be too self-indulgent. It can get too out there. It can just become noise. Not the case with him. He knows how to reel it in just right. Like he knows how to get weird without getting too weird. You know what I mean? Or getting weird without just for the sake of getting weird. You know what I mean? Like he like doing it for a reason. But I can't say enough good stuff about that record. Or Victor. He rules. And I also can't believe that the first Violent Femmes record turns 40 this year. That was insane. Maybe I'll have to see if he would like to come back and do we did Why Do Birds Sing when that turned 30 2 years ago. Maybe we'll come back and talk about one of the greatest debut records of all time turning 40. That would be pretty sick. But let's keep moving on. I know we're like 40 minutes in here and only halfway through, so let's keep moving. Joyce Manor at number 5 with 40 Ounces to Fresno. This one came out in June. I mean, Joyce Manor really have yet to make a bad record. There's really not a Joyce Manor record I don't like. I mean, it seemed like a gimme from the get-go. Like even before hearing a song off of it, I expected I would like this record, and they exactly did. They delivered. I mean, it's a Joyce Manor record. It's short, it's quirky, like you expect from them. I mean, the longest song on the record is the album opener, and it's a cover of an 80s song. That itself is Joyce Manor-like. You know, the first song on your record's a cover of a fucking 80s song, and it's like 3 minutes and something seconds, and none of the other songs, you know, all the other songs are like a minute and a half and stuff. I mean, this whole record is something like 17 minutes altogether. I mean, it is truly in Joyce Manor fashion. I mean, you know, you talk about a band, I keep talking about these bands finding your sound or your niche or, you know, just what you do really well. And I mean, this is very much Joyce Manor. I mean, it's Joyce Manor all the way. You know, I don't feel like they take any like crazy new chances on this one, but at the same time, I think their songs like "Gotta Let It Go" is a good example where I think it is it's a step in a new direction for them in a good way. Like, I don't think it's anything crazy, you know, but it is kind of more anthemic sounding. Like that song in particular. I wouldn't say the whole record, but like, you know, a couple times where maybe they get a little more anthemic sounding than they normally would, maybe bigger guitars and stuff. Like, you know, there are some different things on here. It's definitely not a rehash of the last record or anything like that. But at the same time, you know, it's not the record where Joyce Manor starts getting really, really experimental on things. That is not what they're, and I don't think they ever are either. I mean, they're a band. It's funny because I still feel like they're a newer band, and they're far from. I mean, they've been a band for like 15 years now. I mean, like they were a newer band when I was in college. I haven't been in fucking college now in like 6 years, 6 or 7 years, I think. I can't even do the math. And not even then. I'm thinking like early. I'm talking not even into college. I'm talking me into like year 1 or 2 of college in like 2011. Still thinking of them as the new band. So like as you can tell, what I'm saying is they've been around for a while. I think they know what they. I think they know what they do well, and they go for it. You know, again, like I think this far into their career, I don't feel like Joyce Manor is ever going to be the band who like, you know, all of a sudden hits you with a totally weird. I feel like Cody was the biggest like jump to like a more mature sound, but even that I don't think was like this shocking change or anything from Never Hung Over Again, you know. But this album, like a lot of Joyce Manor too, I mean, it's a good summertime record. Now, funny enough, Cody is one of the best fall records. I know I just mentioned that, but a lot of their records I would put more in the summertime category, and just one of those ones where like, you know, it came out in June, and like on a nice day, either, you know, out walking and shit or just driving around with the windows down, it's perfect for that. You know, I definitely, I think they, it's just kind of the sound, you know what I mean? They're a California band, and it kind of has that sound you tend to get from bands who live in that area. I've kind of talked about it before, but just like, you know, I think your surroundings, how it influences it. You know, I think a little of that sunshiny shit has the kind of, you know, I think if you live in an area like that, it has to kind of come out a little. Just like if you live in like, you know, say Chicago, I feel like some of that comes out in your music. Living in like the Midwest and the snow and stuff, you know, I definitely think your surroundings influence your music whether you realize it or not, you know. But I also feel like, too, you know, I talk about how the band, you know, it sounds like a pretty quintessential, or like, you know, your standard like Joyce Manor record, not in a bad way. I also think it's not a bad record to introduce someone to the band with. Like if someone didn't know Joyce Manor and you were going to like turn a record on, probably not the worst one. I mean, again, it clocks in at like 17 minutes. So it's like, it's easy to digest. You know, the songs don't overstay their welcome, but they're still good and quirky and fun. And it's like, you know, I think right away you would, you know, at least if they're into it, I guess they could listen to it and go, I'm not into that. But like, you know, pretty quick, I think they'd know if they'd like it. But not a bad introduction to the band. If even for yourself, if you've somehow slept on Joyce Manor all this time, not a bad one to, you know, kind of go check out. But yeah, definitely was excited for new Joyce Manor, and they delivered. My 3 on there would be NBTSA, Don't Try, and Gotta Let It Go. Those are all great songs, but nothing on there is really too bad. The only one I gotta say, the only song that I really don't like is You're Not Famous Anymore. I don't know why. I don't think that song's very good. Every other song I love on it. For some reason, I skip that song like every time. I can't tell you why either. Really don't know why, but something about it, just not into it. But anyway, let's keep moving on. Coming in at number 4, released in May of last year, and my 4th favorite record, my favorite interview of last year. I actually, as I'm looking at this list, and I realized earlier too, but like, goddamn, I actually got to interview a lot of people on my top 10 list, which is really fucking cool because, and that is definitely like totally a coincidence. Like, it's not like I'm only just picking people who are on my show, go, well, this guy's on my show, so this is my favorite record. But anyway, John Doe, Fables in a Foreign Land. I mean, so good. But, you know, again, I can't talk about this without talking about John Doe for a second. I mean, that was an honor, getting to interview him for this, because also I love this record. So not only getting to interview a musical hero of mine, but to get to interview him on a record that I genuinely loved was just so cool. Like, just listen to this, I had a million questions, you know, like, that's how you know you like a record. Like, I was not itching. Like, I wasn't trying to figure out for hours what I was going to ask him. I was listening to the record going, oh man, I should ask him this and that. Like, just taking it all in, loving it. This record is just, it's so good, and it's more folky than a lot of his solo work. You know, I feel like you can hear some folk influence for sure in John Doe's music. I mean, I don't think that's totally crazy, but like this is definitely much more on the nose folk than I would say most of his solo output. But it works perfectly. I mean, it's John Doe. He's a master songwriter. Like, he could write. I truly believe that man could write in any genre. He could take on any kind of project. It would be good because it's John Doe doing it. There's just certain musicians who, I mean, obviously, he gets associated with like punk and, maybe a little like, throwing like rockabilly, some Americana and stuff. And, but punk obviously being the main one. But like, I feel like John Doe could do anything and it would be good. I really don't know that he would be bad at anything. And I also think the other thing, too, I think it's just so cool is like, artists can be unfairly written off later in their career. I mean, John Doe is like 69, pushing 70. Like he's up there, he's been at it for a very long time. And like, some artists as you go, I mean, you can fall on that legacy and it's like, people love you for those albums you put out so many years ago, but maybe the later stuff, now they're not as into what you're doing. Not the case with John Doe. I can't say that at all. I mean, he's putting out between this and the last X record. I mean, he's putting out some of the best music of his career. Like, the man is going into his 70s and he's writing some of the best music he's written in his entire career. Like, and his voice too. His voice is that's another one. I mean, as you go on, with age, I mean, your voice can go. His voice, I think, is stronger than ever. His voice sounds so good. Like, he just, it's like, for one, he can totally still do the old X songs, but like, I think his voice has also just gotten stronger. He's almost like, a crooner in a certain way. I don't know crooner in a traditional sense, but he croons, I feel like, more than John Doe used to, and it works so goddamn good. Like, but it's also just soul. The man has soul in his voice. He truly does. Like, just such a great voice, just so powerful. Like, you listen and you always go like, it's just not bullshit. Like, it's always genuine. Like, whatever line he's delivering, whatever he's singing about, you believe it. Even on this record where like, some of them are like kind of dark, folky, like, just songs like, kind of like dark stories like you do in folk music. And I mean, Destroying Angels being one of them where, great, I mean, that's probably my favorite song on the record. And, just telling a really dark story, and it's fictional, but like delivering it in such a way where it's like, you'd almost believe the story's real, which again, not every artist can do that or convey that. And John Doe does it like nothing. It's nothing to him. I mean, he's been doing it forever. It's not like this is the first record you go, wow, I never realized John Doe could write a song. But I also got to say, I mean, still one of the best I think he's ever put out, including his solo stuff. I truly think Fables in a Foreign Land is one of my favorite solo John Doe records. It is really great. I think what was cool too is like, because he by no means needs to collaborate with people. The man can obviously write a song, but this was like his most collaborative record. When I interviewed him, he was talking about how, like, in the way where he would, obviously with like X and stuff, you're like writing with Exene and the rest of the band and stuff, but like, like Destroying Angels being like the best example. I had the best song on the record, and he co-wrote that with Shirley Manson of Garbage and Exene from X. And what came out I thought was amazing. So that collaborative, sometimes it's funny, 'cause a lot of times I hear musicians who collaborate, I'm like, a lot of times it'd be disastrous, because I feel like if you can write yourself, like, it'll be artists who already know how to write a good song. Rivers Cuomo comes to mind. Why he ever needed, to collaborate and have co-writers and stuff, never understood it. You know what I mean? Like, never didn't have it on the blue record, didn't have it on the Blue album, didn't have it on Pinkerton, didn't have, all these people writing songs with him. But then like later on the, on the weaker stuff, he has like all, a million different people writing a fucking Weezer song with him. It's like, dude, I think you know how to write a Weezer song. I don't think you need all these people. So it's one of those things where, like, I mean, obviously John Doe doesn't need to collaborate with people, but like it worked so well on here. Like the stuff he would work on with people, it works so amazingly well that I kind of want to see him do more of it. It's funny because, again, a lot of times I'm anti that. I mean, collaborating at least in that sense, on a whole, on one song is one thing, but on a record, when you collaborate as much as he did on this, a lot of times I'd be weary of it. But no, it worked. It worked absolutely amazingly. I also think some of these songs I would love to hear. Destroying Angels, I know I keep bringing it up, but I would love to hear that done by X. I would love to hear them do that as a full band song. I think that would sound just so good. I also the album, even though it is a solo album, it was done with the John Doe Folk Trio, and he plays in that band with Kevin and Conrad, and the three of them, I mean, it just works so well together. I mean, that trio just like they need to write more records. This is their first record that they put out together. I mean, they've been playing together for a couple years now, and they've played a bunch live. They do a lot of live stuff, but I mean, on record, they need to play more. Like the three of them definitely need to write more music and play together, because that just they're all, John Doe, amazing musician, but I mean, I also got to give props to both of them. I mean, for being really, really good musicians as well. And that whole record, I love it to death. I've listened to it nonstop since it came out. That's one of those albums I really. Some records I'll listen to for a long time, then you listen to other things for a few months and maybe get back to it. But that one's kind of been on nonstop since the record came out. And the three on there, I mean, no surprise: Destroying Angels, Down South, another really, really good one, and the album opener, Never Coming Back. Another one I think I would like to hear X do. I think that one could be. It would be cool to hear it reworked into more of like a fast punk song. I think it would be really, really cool. But let's move on down to the top three now. Let's do it. Number 3, it is The Stereo with 13. This one came out back in May. When bands try to write an album, or when they write an album, I should say, and kind of call it like a spiritual sequel, or you kind of compare it to like your older, like your more popular record or something. You can kind of go in a little cautious or cynical, like all right, like what's that mean? But when The Stereo were talking about how 13 was kind of like a kind of a spiritual follow-up or whatever to 300, I mean, they weren't lying. It truly sounds like a follow-up to that record. And it also sounds like the band never stopped. I mean, it sounds like a great follow-up to a record that has also been out for 20 plus years. So I mean, to not play together for decades and then, to go in and write a record like that and to be able to pull it off, I mean, absolutely amazing. I mean, that's insane, honestly. Like there's so many ways where this album could have not worked. There's chances where this doesn't work when you go back in the studio with the two of you who, I mean, The Stereo, we've talked about a million times on here, but, they were a band till like 2004, but Rory was out of the band after the first record. So, I mean, Rory was out long, he wasn't in the band for their whole, lifespan. So this lineup with the two of them, I mean, the two, songwriters and the ones on the classic Stereo record, they came back and it's like they never stopped. I mean, it's honestly one of those things where you could have fooled someone and been like, yeah, they've been writing albums together forever. Like The Stereo never broke up. Because even though it also sounds like a follow-up to 300, it also sounds fresh. Like it sounds like a band, because they did take chances. They took chances on this record that worked so well. Like things on here you never would have heard them do on 300. Or really on even the ones without Rory, even post-Rory Stereo albums. I mean, I think there's things they did on this one you never would have heard on those, and it did so well. They know the band took new chances, but also, I mean, again, with like knowing when to reel it in and know what you're doing, I mean, they figured it out to write to like how much you can do without, with still staying like quintessential Stereo. It still sounds like the Stereo, but it's also like, it is a more mature, grown up version. Not that the first record was immature or anything like that, but like it still has that Stereo charm. But it's like, these dudes are, they're like in their 40s now, I believe both of them. I know Jamie has kids. I think Rory has kids. And, the rest of the band, I think they got kids and stuff. So like, parents and, a little older and stuff, but like, it's still the fucking Stereo. And my God, is it so good. I mean, Jamie and Rory, just again, you got to focus on that, is they just work together in this way of like They work as good together as they did in 1999, and also in a way where you're like, how were they not writing this entire time? Like, how was Rory and Jamie not putting records out for the last 2 decades? Like the world has been deprived of something when you listen to this. I mean, when you go like, how is this only album number 2 technically with both of them on it? It's just insane. But you also, I mean, on the production side, Jamie produced this one. And I mean, Jamie's an amazing producer to begin with. I mean, that's no secret. But I mean, this record sounds so huge. It's one of those things too. I talk about it all the time. I don't love when bands self-produce and record their own records. I don't always think that's a great thing to have a band member in the producer seat. I just don't think it works. Not with this. Jamie Wolford knows what the hell he's doing. And I would strongly suggest they continue to self-producing. Like, so I can't, that is such a big compliment coming from me, because I really am I'm like, I think you need that outside source. I think you need a producer in there. I think you need someone besides, like, you know, whatever member of the band telling the rest of the band, no, you need to do this or that. You know, like, I just don't think self-producing a lot of times is the way to go. But on this one, no. Like, in-house, it works. Like, the 4 of them is all they need. It's a very self-sufficient machine that I think works. I mean, it's just so good. I mean, it's after first listen, an instant classic. I mean, when they put out the first song, Kings of No Hope, I mean, it was just, you could tell right away. It's like, okay, no, this is going to be good. There's no, whatever worries you might have that they're not going to deliver on a new stereo record, you know, and any worries you have when it's like, man, you know, it's this cool old band that I love that I wish would release new music, but also I wish they would have released it, you know, 2 decades earlier. You know, not the case here. Because this is another one, like, again, came out amazing, could have came out bad. Like, it really, they hadn't written, you know, they've played together since 2011. I mean, this lineup of the stereo, since that Fueled by Ramen show they got back together, I mean, they've played on and off, but I mean, they've played a handful of shows in that, like, decade. Like, I mean, it's not like they're playing daily or even yearly. They've went years without playing shows in there, you know, so I mean, definitely not like a thing where they're like, you know, honing their craft every day. And yeah, I mean, this could have came out and been like, oh man, you know, I wish they would have just not, you know, I wish they would have just stuck to playing some live shows, playing some songs off 300 and just letting it be. But no, this came out, I'm like, holy shit, like I need this band to tour. I need a follow-up to 13. Like we need them to do a lot more. It's just, it works so well. Everything about this, it sounds rejuvenated. And it does. I mean, again, like this, it sounds like a band with more gas in the tank instead of like a band who got back together to kind of put out a half-hearted follow-up years after the fact. Like this sounds, it sounds like classic stereo, but also feels like a fresh young band who's like ready to go do it. Which I mean, and you know, I mean, they're kind of taking things slow. You know, they really, I don't think they've even played a live show since the album came out. You know, I think they'd like to play shows, but I don't think it's a huge. I don't think there's any. There was a time in this band's career where I'm sure if you asked them, they were trying to be like the next big thing or, you know, hit it big with the band. That's not their thing anymore. You know, I think they're in a great place. They're putting out some of the best music, but I also don't think they're like, oh man, we're going to like try to dominate rock radio or try to play arenas. You know what I mean? I don't think that's like what they're trying to do. I don't think that's the plan. But I do think the plan is to write more great music, and I am all about that because this record just came out so good. My third favorite of 2022. And on there, the 3 songs, I would say Kings of No Hope, My Ready Arms, and Seek and Find. Seek and Find is a great example of that, where experimental doesn't sound it sounds more Counting Crows than it does the stereo, but is one of the best songs on the record and works amazingly. So yeah, I love that record. Really, really good one. Let's keep going. Number 2, we got No Win with Dodger Stadium. That one came out back in August. I mean, such a great record. This is another one where the band put out an EP earlier in the year, Enhanced CD EP. Still one of the greatest. I mean, the aesthetic is important here. Like if you've not seen the cover of No Win's Dodger Stadium or their Enhanced CD EP, and you haven't heard the songs or the music videos and stuff, there's an aesthetic to it. I mean, this whole thing is this album, not even the band in particular, because this is their second record, and the first record's nothing like this, but like it is kind of a love letter to the late 90s, early 2000s, you know, in so many ways. And that's what they were going for. And they did it so well. I mean, even if you weren't around during that time, I think you'll still like this record, but if you were like coming of age between like, or even if you weren't, if you remember though, like being on the internet and shit, like between the years 1998 to like 2002, like there's shit on this record that you will appreciate on another level. I mean, like on another level than I think others will, but it's just, it's so good. Like, I think one of the coolest things about this too is this is their second record, and I loved their first one. I mean, I heard them on Downey. Their first album came out in 2019. I've been a fan since it came out, but like this band was never a band that I thought was going to put out like my second favorite record of this year. I mean, that album was good. It was some solid indie rock and stuff, and I've played them on the radio show. I always enjoyed it. But then when they put out that enhanced CD EP earlier this year and listening to it, I mean, it blew me away. It sounded nothing like I was expecting it to. I mean, they still have elements of that first record and like the good indie rock stuff that made me like know when to begin with. But I mean, they totally experimented and experimented in a way, but also I think knew what they wanted. Because again, with the aesthetic and like everything going into this, I mean, you can tell they knew what they were doing. Like it is a fully realized idea that I think was executed amazingly. Like it wasn't like the music was good, but the aesthetic was half-assed, or the other way around where the aesthetic was really good, but the music's not good. Like everything about it just works all together in just such a special, beautiful way that doesn't always. But I mean, the band really did. They went in, and I mean, I give them so much credit. They didn't try to just go, well, let's keep doing what we did on the first record. Like they totally went in, took chances, totally, they kind of kept that indie rock foundation, but besides that, rewrote the whole thing. And I mean, I think the chances they took totally paid off. It's just such a fun ode to like the late 90s, early 2000s, but also without like being a parody or really cheesy. Like it's kind of, because really like nostalgia is such a big thing. Like, I mean, they're even far from the first band to like, do something that kind of celebrates that era, but like they do it in such a way where like, again, like the music is still good. It's not some shitty nostalgia trip. Like everything just works so well and comes off sincere too. Like it's nostalgic and modern all at once, and just it works. And also has like it does have this like I think mainstream appeal to it. Like, there's some albums even on this list where I go, I love them, but I realize maybe it's not something you're going to hear on mainstream radio or something. Like, it's not, maybe you'll hear it on college radio and something like, my show or something on like public radio or something, but like, commercial radio is not really going to touch it. Whereas like this, I could hear these songs. Like I could hear some of this stuff on like, alternative radio, maybe even peeking its head into, like top 40 radio and stuff. Like it's really like just really well, like there's times where it goes into like pop territory in like but like really good though, like, and just songs that are catchy, you'll just stay in your head forever, which again is what they were going for, and they absolutely did it. I mean, this is some of the catchiest songs you'll hear all year, I think, are on this record. And I mean, I think too, like lyrically, they're cut and dry, pretty lyrics that anyone can relate to. I mean, it has that appeal, like honestly, like a broad appeal to it musically and lyrically, where it's like, I think this is an album I could put on for someone who gets in the car who maybe doesn't generally like the things I listen to, but like, I don't know, maybe just even likes just shit on the radio. I feel like I could throw this on and they would like it. Like someone who would get in the car with me and normally not like shit I'd play, this is something they would like. I truly think so. Like it has a broad appeal to it in the best way. And, and also funny enough too, like it has a modern sound, but some of these songs you also could hear on the radio, like circa 2001, which it is so cool to me. I think everything about it just works. Cause this whole, again, it could have blown up in their fucking face. They could have made a terrible follow-up. I would have been like, it could have just been something like, well, that band put out one good record in 2019 and they're like, I don't know what they're doing on this one, but like, forget it. But not at all. I mean, I fell in love with this band on a new level. I mean, I was a fan of them for a couple years. They were great, whatever. But, even admittingly, I mean, they weren't like my all-time favorite band. But, I mean, after this came out, I've just been listening to it nonstop. The three on this, Hit the Line, Surfing, and The Hit. But really, there's not a bad song on that record. That whole goddamn thing is good. Let's get to number one. Here we are. It is time for it. And to be honest, if you've been listening to the show at all this year, I probably brought up that it probably was going to be number one, just like with the Dirty Neil with Fuck Art coming out on January 1st. It was like, I mean, you know, from literally day one of the year, I'm like, I think it's going to be my favorite record. And my favorite record of this one, and I've thought it since the beginning of the year, I thought, damn, this might be my favorite. Reminders, Best of Beach Punk, my favorite record of 2022. That album, and it came out in April, but I got a stream of it early. Like I'd not heard of the band. They're from the UK. I got an email in like January. It was early in the year. I remember it was like probably like January. And you know, I don't know, checked it out. I mean, it was just honestly a couple. It's funny because like again, it can be hit or miss. Like the Eves being one of them. I think from the same PR firm too, who, you know, I mean, sometimes they'll send me, you know, emails of like press releases of new bands and like totally nothing I would ever listen to or play on the show. And then other times you'll get that and it's like, oh my God, like what is this? And I mean, I got hit with a couple things this year, and Reminders was like the first one of the year to really hit me. And I mean, it just had lasting power. This record, pure fun record. It throws, I don't care what time of year you're listening to this. I mean, again, I was introduced to this like January of last year. It was fucking summertime, baby. It was summertime the second I put this record on. Like, I don't care. It could be cold as fuck, and I'd be out going for a late night walk, or it could be driving through the snow somewhere. Doesn't matter. All melted, and it was July, and you were, you know, like driving on the West Coast. You know, you were like looking out on the ocean, you know, you're hanging out with friends on the beach. Like it really, Best of Beach Punk is such a great title. It is, talk about a fitting title for a record too. It works with it all the way through. I mean, this album is just a no nonsense pop punk album. It honestly like reminds you why you love the genre to begin with. Like, you know, pop punk is one of my favorite genres. And it's funny because, like, I mean, I feel like I cover a broad spectrum of, like, I always just say punk and alternative on this show, but, like, I go many different places, and I realize it's not lost on me that, like, someone who might enjoy my interview with, say, John Doe of X or Tony Scalzo Fastball, you know, may not like the other side of, like, you know, maybe they're not fans of, like, you know, early 2000s pop punk and emo. You know, but like at the end of the day, I love both those worlds. Like, I listen to Blink-182 and I listen to Replacements. Like, I think Enema of the State is a great record. I think Let It Be is a great record. Like, I think both of those things are masterpieces. You know what I mean? Like, they're, you know, I'm just of that nature where, like, you know, I like what I like. And you know, pop punk is a genre that I love quite a bit, but like at the end of the day, there's so much of it sounds a lot alike. You know, there's stuff I like, but it never hits my top 10. I mean, I think if you look at my top 10 on here, you know, very few are just, if any, are just straightforward like pop punk bands. Reminders really, I mean, there's other things going on here, but, you know, just a great pop punk band who, like, they know what they're doing. They know the good I mean, they like the good stuff. They love the good bands, and also same with that though. I know they like the Replacements and shit. Like, they like they like things outside of pop punk, but like they just really like it's fun, no nonsense pop punk, but without being just a rehash of everything else. You know, like there's just so when I hear that label on an album or something, or I hear that label on a band, you know, it's not always a great thing. You might go in and go, well, this sounds like 10,000 other bands. Not the case with Reminders. They put out this just great, like, pop punk bands should be listening to them and going, this is what you should be doing. Like, this band has, the songs are catchy, but they're still substance. Like, they're simple, they're catchy, but there's still substance, you know? I mean, it's still like a good song. It's not just pointless, mindless, like poppy shit, but it is catchy, you know? It is catchy. Like, I don't know that I even want to say poppy, but like it is catchy stuff. It is really good. It'll get stuck in your head forever. You know, it's just, and it's a quick, perfect, it's 10 songs. It's under 30 minutes. It never goes anywhere crazy. You know, there's a nice couple of times where they get a little acoustic on you, but like that's the craziest thing. And it's great. And it's all good and works together. And, you know, just not an album where it's like, well, it's really good for the first like 6 songs, and it peters off for 4 songs, then comes back later. It's like, no, like, and 10 songs too. Sometimes I like an album 10 songs. Sometimes I think it's not enough for an album. This is perfect at 10 songs. I think this album is perfect with 10. I don't think it needed any more or any less. This is good right where it's at. And I mean, same with that. Like, you put this album on, and like, I mean, if you're driving somewhere that takes, you know, I mean, if you just got to drive for like 20 something minutes, you'll hear the whole album. I mean, you don't need to go for a wild ride to hear the entire thing. I mean, you can pop this on, and I feel like I say that as an example because I listen to this while driving a lot. It's just a good driving record. Because again, no matter what time of year, if it's summertime, it's a good record, and if it's not summertime, it's a good record because it will transport you there. But it really, like, the album sounds focused in that I think the band knew what they wanted with it, and they successfully did it. Like, I think they knew they wanted a fun punk rock record with, loud distorted guitars, some great bass lines, some really, really good bass lines on here that are more like a Scott Shiflett, or even like I'm blanking on his name. Oh, Nate from Banner Pilot, and from like Off of Their Heads, or Mike Dirnt too. Green Day and stuff, like, or even Dan Andriano, like those like pop punk bass players who don't just play straight up just root notes. They're not just playing it, root note, just all eighth notes, just root notes. They're really, like, some of the driving forces of these songs are in the bass lines, which is really cool because, again, you don't always get that in pop punk. Sometimes you get the most uninspired bass playing you've ever heard, but I think the bass playing is some of the best stuff on here. But the guitar is really great too. Like, I think the guitar on here is awesome. It's like, it's not solo-y, it's not crazy intricate guitar, but it just works so well with the music. Like, it's not overindulgent, it's nothing crazy, but it just sounds perfect. Like, I think, like, Again, actually it is. This is my favorite song on the record. And, like, the guitar, like, I taught myself how to play it, and it's not anything, like, crazy, but it's so fun to play, and it just works so well with it. Like, it's great pop punk guitar. Like, it works so perfectly for what the band is doing. Like, I think it does so well. And, yeah, I mean, this is another band too, where, like, I think on the mainstream scale, I think they have appeal that, like, you could hear this on the radio. You could hear the songs on this album on the radio. You could, they have that, like, like that side where, like, with a band like Blink or something, where it's like, even if someone who's not a big pop punk fan, but they like the Blink-182s or any of the kind of, like, kind of bigger pop punk bands, or the Green Days, or, whatever, they like the big names, but they don't know much else. I think they'll hear Reminders and love it. But I also think you can also be, big old punker and know your shit and still really, really like this album. I mean, it's been nonstop. This is another one that never really, I never really stopped listening to this one. This one has been listened to from me from the beginning of the year. And it killed me too, because again, I discovered it before it came out. And you can't play it on the radio. Like, I wanted to play that album, I wanted to play those songs on the radio for so fucking long, and I couldn't, like, it's like I got to enjoy this record, but I couldn't share it. And it's like, that's one of the best things to do on the radio shows, I mean, talking about all these great albums of last year, it's like, when I hear these albums, it's like, fuck, I can't wait to play them for people and, talk about why I love them and just get into them on air. And, yeah, with the Reminders, I had to wait a little while. I had to wait a couple months to get into that and finally start playing their stuff on the air. I think Carousel, their first single, came out. I could play that for a while, but, like, that whole record, it was like there's so much stuff that I wanted to play, and I had to wait till the album got released. But so good. And actually, I will say, I've not interviewed him yet, but I believe we will be having Leo from Reminders, who he was on last year. We got to talk about the record. He will be coming back, I believe, very soon. So be on the lookout for that. I can't wait. That is very coincidentally. I will give that little tease. He will be coming on soon. I can't wait to talk to the dude who, I mean, not only already had him on, he was really fun. So I already know he's a great dude. But, get to talk to him a little more about the record. And, I already told him it was my favorite of the year. I probably even told him when he was on that was my favorite at the time. But nothing knocked it out of the number one slot. A lot of great music came out. Nothing hit me like that record. And it still does. Honestly, I was listening to it on the way to the studio earlier and just as pumped on it as I was when I first got into it. An instant one, too. I mean, some albums you got to listen to a couple times, and then they click for you. And that was one where I was like, holy shit. Like, the first listen, I was like, all right, they got me. Post Paris Blues, I heard the first song on the record, and talking about those bass lines and stuff, too. I'm blanking on their bass player's name, and I apologize. Amazing bass player. But, I mean, just listening to it right away, I was like, oh, fuck yeah. Like, I think if you're a bass player, and you appreciate those kinds of things, those like driving bass lines and punk rock, like if you're a fan of the Face to Face or Green Day or Banner Pilot, you know, that kind of like bass playing, like I think you will definitely appreciate the bass playing on this record. But everything's great. Like I think the simplicity of the band is one of their strong suits, because again, like I know Leo comes from the school of the Ramones. I know he loves all the good shit. We talked about all the good bands and influences, and you know, that dude knows you only need a couple chords and a good melody. You know, I mean, he's good at that too. He writes some catchy fucking songs. Honestly, every song on this album is catchy. But my top three for this one, and again, this will be on the playlist. You can go give that a listen and hear all this great music I've been talking about this episode. Again, that is my favorite song on the record, Carousel and Daisy. But that is another album. There's not a stinkeroo on there. All 10 songs are great. I cannot wait for more music from them. And I know at the end of this, if you're in the UK, them and Lovebreakers, who put out one of the best records of 2021 the year prior, they're going on a little tour. They're doing like 6 dates at the end of this month. They're going to late January into like the first week of February, and definitely go see if they're playing around you. I hope those two play the States at some point together, and Grade 2 as well. The 3 best bands doing it right now in the UK, which Leo of Reminders has a side project with 2 of the dudes from Grade 2 called Transatlantics, and we'll probably talk about that too when I have Leo on. But those 3 bands, and Grade 2 is about to release a new record this year. Funny enough, look at it, that's probably how it's going to work. 2021, one of the best records came out of the UK. It was Lovebreakers with Primary Colors. Last year, it was Reminders with Best of Beach Punk. 2023, probably Grade 2 with their new record coming out in like I think it comes out in like a month or 2. And I think that's going to fucking blow me away and everybody else away. There's some I've said it a bunch on here. I mean, I've interviewed, you know, Lovebreakers, Reminders, got to interview the dudes from Grade 2 at some point. But I mean, I've said it a bunch, but like some of the best music going on right now, because these are all like fresh new bands who've only been around for a couple years. I mean, some of the best shit's going on in the UK right now, like really good stuff. And I would love to see them live, and would love to see them come play the States too. And also try and do my part. We gotta expose, you know, we gotta get that name out here more in the States. Reminders and Lovebreakers and Grade 2. Grade 2's done a little touring over here, I believe. Lovebreakers and Reminders, I don't think they've ever played the States yet, but hopefully that'll change. I love them both. And Lovebreakers, I think, have a new album coming out at some point in 2023. So lots of good stuff I'm looking forward to this year. But 2022, again, some really, really good records, and that was a good year for music. So thank you very much for listening to that. I realize that's the funny thing with these is I know they're going to go long, but I still try to keep them not too long. But we are 90 minutes in talking these top 10, which, funny enough, I was going to have a guest come in. I was going to like co-host or have a guest or whatever on this one and talk both our top 10s of the year. And it was probably better it's just me, because it would have been like a 4-hour. Last year we did that with Joey Cobra. He was in for our favorites of last year, and it was fun, but it was definitely a long episode. So maybe it's good it's just me on here doing my top 10 instead of 2 people doing our technically like top 20. That definitely will take a while. But yeah, this was really fun. Tons of good music, and again, that wasn't even actually, you know your best bet. I will make a playlist with all these songs on here because I do it every year. But if you really want to see like on top of these albums and more, the playlist you want to go see is from the Power Chord Hour, the radio show from like 2 weeks ago, because I played music. I did my top 10 albums of the year, and I played 3 songs off of them. Like I told you on here, I played, and some of them are the same ones I have on here. Some are different. I did that, then I played all of Best of Beach Punk, but then we did another, 3 hours of just my favorite music of 2022. So it's all together 4 hours of not just, it's a bunch of music off these 10 records, but then there's like singles, songs off EPs, songs off albums that didn't hit my top 10. So like that might also be the playlist to go check out if you just want to hear more great music from last year. But yeah, there really was a ton of it, and a bunch of cool stuff this year, I think, coming, which I'm looking forward to. The soonest being White Reaper. They got their new album coming out, Asking for a Ride. They'll be out in like 2 weeks or something. I think it comes out the 27th. And yeah, I mean, I'm recording this on the 11th, so comes out in a little over 2 weeks. And I mean, all 3 singles off that so far have been solid, and that is definitely, I've been anticipating that since the last record in 2019. and I think that's going to deliver. But fuck, in another year, we'll be back here. I'll be talking my favorite records of 2023. That's going to be insane. But let's not jump ahead. I'm excited to get into it. I know we have somewhat of a late start. I mean, the radio show we've already done this year. I mean, I've continued to do the radio show, and I mean, we did just do, I guess, the other podcast like 2 weeks ago. But I feel like, because I kept meaning to do this episode, and it's so fucking late, that I feel like we're starting the year so late, starting on like the 11th. But really, people are kind of taking that break and slowly getting things started again. So, hopefully nothing too bad. You weren't running around going, where the hell's Anthony? I'm back. We got that for you. I'll be back next week with Maddie Grace from Cluttered, Crisis Party, Gross. Oh, what other bands? Oh, there's so many. I'm blanking on Future Girls, a bunch of them. She's in so many bands. We just did our second interview. It's her second time on the show. I did it last week with her. My voice was strained, which you will hear next week. I sound like I have strep throat, even though it didn't feel like strep throat. And I don't think it was. It went away in like 4 days. But I had such a good time with her. It was so fun, because also we already have talked for like 2 hours, from the last interview, and we bullshit for like an hour before we even did this interview. So it's one of those things where it's like, it's an interview, but it's also kind of two buds just fucking around. You know what I mean? Like, at some point, it's like, all right, we've collectively talked on the, on StreamYard or whatever. We've talked collectively for like 4 hours. Like, it's kind of like just having a conversation with a friend at that point. But she has tons of great music coming out this year, and Cluttered just put out a really good EP at the end of 2022. So we'll get into all of that, and then we'll have some more guests. I'm kind of getting everyone around. I definitely won't tell you I have like 20 guests lined up. I'm still figuring everything out, getting everyone around. But I have some people, if they get back to me, that I've sent out that would be really, really cool. But we will see where we go from there. But I'm excited to start another year of the podcast, and I can't believe we're already. I mean, the radio show is gonna be celebrating its 7th year in February, but even the podcast. I mean, I did our first one in like December 2019, and now it's January 2023. I mean, there was even when I started this, I just moved back to New York after Minnesota, living in Minnesota. There wasn't even a pandemic. There's been a pandemic. It's been fucking like 4 years now. Like, my God, time has passed. So yeah. Anyway, until I come back next week, follow us online at Power Chord Hour, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. The radio show, we're in our new time slot, 8 to 11 Eastern on Friday nights. And now we got a replay Tuesday nights, midnight to 3. So including if you're on the West Coast, because you can stream the radio station live online at WRFALP.com and on the WRFA mobile app. So, I mean, if you're on the West Coast and, my normal time of 8 to 11, that might work a little better, too, for you. Midnight to 3 Eastern is 9 to midnight your time. So, or even if just, I also realized that, and it was something I really didn't realize when I started the show, but like, Friday nights, literally into Friday night, like, a lot of people are going out and doing stuff, even if you're not going out partying, you're probably doing shit on Friday night. So, like, I realized tuning in, on a Friday night may be hard. So I like the replay on it, because what the fuck are you doing Tuesday night? You know what I mean? Like, it's going into, Monday to Tuesday. It's not. It's right at the beginning. You kick off your Tuesday at midnight with the radio show for 3 hours. Like, what are you doing at Tuesday at midnight? Not a goddamn thing. So tune into that. And I mean, if you're in the Jamestown area, 107.9 WRFA. Anywhere else, again, you can stream the radio station on our website, WRFALP.com, and on WRFA on the mobile app. Also, if you're listening to this day that it comes out, because I mean, this is happening tomorrow, it'll be Thursday the 12th. I'm doing Arts on Fire, which is a program that I host on WRFA. We do Arts on Fire live. It's our first one of the year, and it's really cool. We do a video. We do it live. And it's a performance, and I host it. I interview the musicians and stuff. It's kind of like a late night kind of vibe, you know what I mean? Kind of like a late show, kind of like, like David Letterman going up and like talking to the band after a song, like a couple questions and stuff. Not a real in-depth interview, kind of go up, talk for a couple minutes. They play some songs. I come back up, talk for a couple minutes, host it. Thank everyone for tuning in and stuff. But that'll be going on tomorrow night at 7 Eastern on WRFA, and you can also watch that on YouTube at WRFA. Just search WRFA on YouTube. But you can watch yours truly. Obviously this is a audio medium, but that and live too. You can watch me live. You can watch if I fuck up, it's live. There's no, it's just in there, baby. So it's always fun. I mean, it's more music centric, and it's more on. We have Matt Maloof, a local artist, tomorrow. It's all local too, like from Chautauqua County. But we'll have him in, and it's always a fun time. But if you want to check that out, I mean, totally different from the Power Chord Hour. I mean, the bands we have in too are like not, are normally not really, very different from what I play on the Power Chord Hour. Though funny enough, we just in December we had a guest on, and Sally Schaefer, a great musician from Buffalo, was playing in the band who came in for Arts on Fire Live, and she plays in Stress Dolls. So, there is some like overlap there, but we get into like different genres and stuff. I mean, the one month we had a 17 or a 19-piece jazz band in, like things like that. So like, yeah, totally different. But if you want to check that out, yours truly is hosting it tomorrow night. And I guess that is it. So until now, rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast if you would. That helps out a lot. Tell your friends about us, all that good shit. But until next week for the Power Chord Hour, I'm Anthony Merchant. Thank you so much for listening.